In this video, I like to share some of my thoughts behind the 360-degree feedback. As I mentioned in several of my talks, actually the idea of 360 came as a result of two experiences. One, when I was going through the Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Sciences, uh, what is now called as Basic Human Process Lab or laboratory training. The first one I went through was sometime in the year 1970 with the National Institute of Health Administration and Education, which was conducted by Dr. Somnath Chattopadhyay and Uday Parekh. Before that, I was witnessing a program for the faculty, and I have been hearing about the T group training from Uday Parekh and Somnath Chattopadhyay and a whole number of others. What impressed me in the entire T group at that time and later in ISABS was that you go to a place far away from where you live and interact with a group of strangers for about 5 to 6 days in a what they call as a laboratory setting in a hotel, where the facilitator only creates an atmosphere of fearlessly sharing with each other, giving feedback, talking whatever you like, expressing yourself fully, and getting to know from others the way you express yourself, the way you behaved, what is the kind of an impact that you have made. In other words, the group works as a mirror, and you learn from them something about yourself, about your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and the way you respond, whether you are reactive, proactive, etc., etc. A number of things depending on whatever you have shown in those 4 to 5 days. This was the typical T group kind of a training. It's called stranger group, encounter group, learning group, so many names were known. As I went through this for a number of years, it occurred to me that we seem to rely quite a bit on strangers because we are afraid that people who are known to us either cannot give feedback because they are too nice to us, therefore they don't want to give negative feedback with the fear that it may be hurting us, or if they are in our supervisory cadre, they don't want to give positive feedback because then you may in return expect a promotion or a incentive, or you may stop doing work you have the way you have been doing earlier, and so on. There is always a fear of feedback. Fear of seeking feedback, fear of giving feedback, particularly that of giving feedback. And that is why in T group, there is no anonymity there. In T group, the persons who are not known to you, they are strangers. So strangers are, they met you and you don't know where they have come from, but now you know them and they are not related to your work and so on, so there is nothing to be afraid of. So strangers are more reliable in giving feedback and working as mirrors. So this is to me very interesting kind of a phenomena in applied behavioral sciences. The same way, whenever I administer some psychometric tools like the locus of control, interpersonal trust, FIRO-B, MBTI and things like that, and give it to managers and interpret their results and tell them how good a person they are, how good a supervisor they are, etc. They used to say that, Professor, you gave me this tool and gave me very good kind of concepts, but this is what I think. So I answered questions and then you gave me a feedback on that by labeling them into internal or external, etc., etc. How about the possibility of other people giving me feedback? Rather than my answering a set of questions, how about other people asking me or answering set of questions, and you label, do I come across as an internal or external, introvert, extrovert, trusting person, whatever it is. So these two concepts together, the concept of strangers giving feedback, while we seem to be having so many people who observe us very closely, but yet we seem to believe somebody with whom we interacted for about a couple of days during the T group training is more reliable, has more valid data, etc., simply because he follows certain principles which the trainer has said. Or in case of tools, is it possible to give these tools to some people and ask them to assess? So these are the two insights which I got, which led me to create a new program called Leadership Styles and Organizational Effectiveness. And the reason why I called it Leadership Styles was one of the tools I was working at the time was the Leadership Style Inventory. Besides that, we also had 5OB and a whole lot of other tools. So we sent these out to a set of individuals and we asked each one of them to nominate a group of people who worked very closely with them, assured anonymity, and collected feedback, tabulated feedback. And since we don't know who is giving the feedback, all that we have is anonymity. And we gave this consolidated anonymous feedback to the individual after preparing, calling the individual for a 3-day workshop and in interpreting his own, her own kind of a scores. And in addition, after arousing the motivation, asking the person, would you like to know what other people think about you and so on. So this is what led to 360-degree feedback. Now so many years have passed, there is a lot of use and abuse of the 360-degree feedback. The other day somebody asked me to address in relation to the new education policy and to the new education system something on introducing innovations to build emotional intelligence of people. How do we create emotional intelligence in people? Or how do we create soft skills in human beings? How do we create any competencies? Nowadays, this is the competency era. I think if you touch any consultant from anywhere in the world, they say we specialize in behavioral competencies or managerial competencies. We can do competency mapping for you and we can identify the most critical competencies needed to be successful leaders in your company, senior managers, middle managers, etc., etc. So I think the world has become a soft skill competency world. Soft skills are very, very important in these days. I mean, that is what we say. Now, the 360-degree feedback, in my view, is a great tool for soft skill development. Now, this, you don't need to use it in the way in which we have been promoting. I just want to ask this very simple question. If you can go for a week's program, pay a fabulous amount of money, lock yourself up, sit in a 5-star hotel or a good hotel with the help of a facilitator with a group of 7 people. At the end of these 5-6 days, get tremendously helped because they have given you what is called as the objective and unbiased kind of feedback because they are not your bosses, they are not your colleagues, etc., etc. So the feedback that is given to you is given out of context. The context is the hotel, context is the tea group, context is a totally strange kind of an environment. Whereas in our real life, we are not context free. Every moment we are working in a context. We are working in relation to our departmental goals, in relation to our organizational vision and values, in relation to the activities which we are supposed to, if you are an entrepreneur, to earn your bread and butter, whatever you are supposed to do and so on. So every action that we undertake is in a context. And most of the actions we undertake are observed by other people. These could be our own family members. These could be our colleagues. These could be people who may be our customers, maybe our suppliers. Anybody with whom we have interacted at a given point of time, in relation to the context in which we live, we have created impressions. If not impressions, we created a perspective, we created an understanding, we created some kind of an impact. Do you want to know what is the impact you have made? Do you want to know how you have come across to that particular kind of a person? Do you want to know whether there is something that you can improve? Now, if you want to know, I think there is a very important conceptual clarity you and I require. And that conceptual clarity is to develop an attitude to respect yourself and respect every other human being. Respect the other human being means trust the other human being as capable of being objective, as capable of sharing his or her experiences. Okay, every human being is biased. Every human being is biased. Colleagues are biased, parents are biased, children are biased, spouses are biased, your siblings are biased, everyone is biased. Why biased? Because every person looks at the other person from his or her own perspective. Each one of us is a bundle of experiences accumulated over a period of time. In addition to this, we are, as Sadhguru says, products of our own memory. Part of the memory is inherited from ages. Our biological system, quite a bit of it is inherited. Now you don't even know from where you have inherited. I mean, you can only trace up to your parents, grandparents, great grandparents, and so on. After that, you can't trace back maybe a few centuries ago this body that we are having. Who is that particular person who is responsible for whatever? I think the temperament we have, the metabolism we have, the biological infrastructure we have absolutely no clue. This is inherited, a series of factors. So you have inherited this, but in addition, the psychological world is not inherited. This inherited physical sense, I think, makes meaning out of all the experiences you have, moderated by the kind of parents you have, moderated by the kind of society in which you live, moderated by the people who are around you, and so on. So all these moderating kind of impact that has on you makes you whatever you are. And that is the reason why no two individuals are equal. Every individual is different from the other individual. So if each individual is different from the other, shouldn't we therefore learn the basic principle of respecting the creation, respecting each individual? Now, same way you respect the other person, you respect yourself, your talent. We are born talented. Unfortunately, we are also born in a context. The context decides which of the talents you use, which of the talents you bring out. If you are born and brought up in a, let us say, in a migratory labor's house, your talent expression is dependent upon the kind of circumstances that migratory labor goes through. One fine morning, suppose that migratory labor becomes a big entrepreneur, organizes a number of other migratory laborers, and start a labor supply school or labor supply, and add to that somebody comes to his rescue and gives an internet facility. Now he becomes a partner in the technology, starts, let us assume, for some wonderful, I think, kite flying, you can say, just as a thought, that he or she becomes, I think, a great entrepreneur, supplier of migratory labor. And you were born when that person was a migratory labor, but you became grown up. By the time you grew up, he is a very high-tech czar, not very literate, but having a large number of other kind of people. So your circumstances have changed. It's not a part of you. They have changed. Contrasted with this, your neighbor who was born in a migratory labor's house and forever, for ages remained as a migratory labor because their parents probably thought they didn't have enough opportunity to bring this particular person up, and the person also, following his father and mother, went on, I think, shifting jobs, shifting cities, and have become now, for most of his life, remained a migratory labor. So both the persons had talent. Circumstances in the case of one person helped that person to be a part of a family, and that later educated him, made him an electronic engineer, a computer person, maybe an innovator, maybe a startup man, maybe a great industrialist. Everything is possible. So that means every human being, irrespective of where you are, whether you are an ordinary person, including a beggar, a person who is on the street, who is making his money only by begging, versus a rickshaw puller, maybe a canteen server, a person who helps people by serving things in the canteen and so on. They are all capable kind of people, all capable people. So if you want to respect feedback, first I think we have to respect human being. You have to respect yourself. You have to respect all the other people. I'll continue this in my next session. This is part 2.